points that you would look at when you're reviewing a question for the first time? We've covered grade appropriateness and we've covered alignment to the skills in the syllabus.
We can, at the first sight, we can review the way the question was framed.
Yes.
Its language and grammar, I
Yes.
think so.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, we will review the question itself as its own unit and see whether the language within the question is correct, whether there are no errors within the question itself, right? So yes, first, when we're reviewing a question, there are two ways in which we'll look at it. The first is as if we are a student. So putting yourself in the student's shoes and saying that if I'm receiving this question, am I able to understand and answer this question? Am I able to identify what the correct answer is? Am I able to understand what the instruction is telling me to do, and so on? The second is as a content expert or as a teacher, looking at the question within the context of the paper or the assignment or whatever the question is being used in, which is to say, does this question cover the skill which it's supposed to cover? Does this question have anything that will make it too difficult for my students or too easy for my students? Does this question have anything that's ambiguous or anything that I do not want to test, and so on? So now on the screen, if you can see, we've listed some parameters to keep in mind when you're reviewing a question. So it's like a checklist that when you see a question, these are all the things that you can kind of check to make sure that the question is of good quality. So the first is the concept or the skill worth testing. So what does this mean to you? Can you give me an example or any thoughts on what does it mean if a skill is worth testing?
Yes, ma'am. As I think that whether the question is testing the skill that really we want to test. For example, if we want to test the analytical skill of a student, so whether the question is testing that skill, I mean, does the question lead to think student analytically? So that is that we need to check.
Yes. Anything else? Any other thoughts on this first point?
Is it language skills, LSRW?
Yes,
Can
so
we?
assuming that it's part of the language paper itself, but for any subject, this could work.
Okay, okay, okay. I asked because this is for English language teachers. That's why I asked this question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it can also check that whether that skill has been taught to the student or not, or whether it is for that particular class or not.
Yes. Can you give an example of that, ma'am? Like what, if you are creating a question for grade 10, what are some skills that you would want to test and what are some skills that you feel would not be worth testing? Or if anyone else wants to give an example here.
For 10th class, I think students should be able to give his own idea about any incident which is depicted, or for example, if any poem is taught. So whether student is able to understand the meaning in depth, or whether is just reading the getting the literary meaning.
Right. So again, taking your example of a poem for grade 10, can someone give me an example of a skill that would not be worth testing for grade 10? If you are giving a poem in an assessment for grade 10. Yes, Rajshri ma'am?
Yeah, ma'am, I would like to go for that.
Yeah.
For example, right now in our classrooms, though we are not supposed to talk about our classrooms right now because we are talking about MP level, yeah, students of
Yes.
MP. But still, I would like to discuss because we can't avoid those things. Uh, Suppose right now the situation is the concept of skill of suppose a poem we were checking for poem. The skill how to appreciate author's craft. I think that kind of thing students are not able to understand or learn in our classrooms, and we are not. I think we are not even teaching them from that point of view. That skill we are not giving them. Yeah, how to appreciate author's craft and a bit of mood and all. We just tell them, we just describe them or explain them if this kind of mood is there, but we don't go in depth. So this skill is not developed, I think.
Okay, so an example of a skill that you might not want to test is if it's something that is beyond the scope or something that is very difficult. But of course, keeping in mind that just because it's very difficult doesn't mean that it's not worth testing. Maybe it could be a skill that you students should be having, or students, if any region, should be having. And so using the assessment or using the question, you want to encourage them to think that way. But yes, if you were asking a grade 3 student about the author's craft or about moods and tones, then that would definitely be something that is not a skill for grade 3. Correct? How about what would be an example of a skill that is too simple for grade 10? Does anyone have any examples of that?
I think mechanical skill, ma'am, recalling, that's simple for them.
Right. So for grade 10, if you receive a question that is asking students a very simple recall question, or if it's in a poem asking students about rhyming words, that would be a skill that's not worth testing for grade 10. Any other points by anyone on the first point, on whether it's a skill worth testing? Any other points that's not been mentioned?
Ma'am, is it very philosophical things which students don't understand? Because in that age, students generally don't understand philosophy or adhyatma very much. So if it is deep philosophical things, I think those things should not be tested from the students. Actually, that is not expected from the students of that age. Because
Right.
these things come through experience and age and maturity.
Right. Correct. So it should be something that's within the scope of what the student is expected to know at that age or at that grade level. So then moving on to the second point, is the question interesting? So what, according to you, would make a question interesting for a student?
If the question is simple and easy to understand, I think that makes question interesting. Or also, the length of the question should not be very big. Otherwise, when students start reading it, they may not feel it interesting. And thirdly, very difficult words and ambiguous words, their usage makes a question not interesting.
Right. Yes, something that is again very lengthy or expects the student to read too much might not be very interesting for them. Any other points on what makes a question interesting? Amit sir, would you like to say something? You haven't spoken in a while. Okay, so to maybe narrow it down a bit, suppose you are creating a passage, a reading comprehension passage for your students. What kind of topics would you include that would be interesting, and what topics would be not interesting for them? And how would that affect the students' performance?
Topics related to their age, for example, games, some sports, TV, computers, about their learning, movies, actors, actresses, serials. I think these things make questions interesting. and things like, as I said, spirituality and philosophy.
Yes.
These things make a question less interesting.
Right. So, exactly, ma'am. Something that the students would relate to, or that the students would maybe talk about on a day-to-day basis, or talk about amongst themselves. Contexts like these would make a question interesting for them. So, apart from passages, where else do we have such contexts which we can check? For instance, in grammar or vocabulary questions, we sometimes include sentences or small paragraphs for them to read and fill out, right? So even there, we can make sure that the question that we're asking is interesting. Another way in which we talk about interesting is the way it asks the student to think. So again, this is somewhat related to the first point, that if the questions are all very direct questions, very straightforward questions for a higher grade, that's not very, first of all, that's not very worth testing for grade, for a higher grade. And second, it won't be very interesting for the student either, because it doesn't require them to really think or to put any of the expected skills into use, right? Any other ways in which you can think of making a question interesting? Anyone who has any thoughts here?
This is Hariram Joshi.
Yes, sir.
The question which appeal to the reasoning of the learners,
Yes.
they are more interesting, and they are worth remembering also. Sometimes it happens that the question was uh, uh, based on some rational, including direct knowledge, but it had some rationality also there. Then the question is interesting, I think so.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, sir. Any other points here, or do you want to move to the next one? Yes, no?
I think if we are just making a question which includes a logical aptitude, it means a student has to apply his or her logical aptitude, it makes it interesting.
Yes. Right.
And also the questions which don't offend the students, whether on the basis of their caste or their social condition,
Yes.
uh, directly or indirectly, those questions also lure students.
Yes. Exactly, ma'am. Okay, so then the next point is whether the question is age appropriate. So one part of this we already discussed on whether the skill is too difficult or too easy for them. But how else would we check whether a question is age appropriate? Apart from just the skills, any ideas here? Yes, Garima ma'am, you want to say something?
Yeah, actually, there are certain topics, there are certain issues which are also not age appropriate. Um, I mean to say, which we feel, as I spoke earlier about casteism, about violence,
Yes.
about politics.
Right. Such topics might be too much for a student of grade 2, grade 3, grade 4.
Yeah.
You might want to include these only in higher grades. Any other examples? Pankaj sir, you haven't said anything in a while. Would you like to try giving your point here?
I think the list is perfect. And if we follow all the instructions given in the list, then question must be good, must be a good one.
Thank you, sir.
And apart from that, one thing which is missing here, it's validity and reliability. I think validity is there in bullet point number 4. Is the question checking what it is expected to check, means its validity. But reliability of a question is also important. I think so.
Yes. So,
Thank you.
how would you check reliability? Which point would it come under here? So, suppose you have an MCQ question. Reliability of that would mean what? Sir, you were saying something?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay.
Would you want me to respond?
Yes. So you were saying that reliability is also important, right? So what
Yes,
comes
yes,
under
yes.
reliability? For example, in an MCQ question, what would it mean if it's reliable?
Reliable, for example, if any question, whether it's MCQ or descriptive type of question,
Yes.
it is administered today or tomorrow. It doesn't affect the responses given by the testees.
Right. So every
it-
student who's answering correctly should answer it the same way in the case of an MCQ, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Right. Yes, that is an important point. I think some of that is covered a bit in maybe points 6 and 7. But yes, that's an important point, and directly we can mention validity and reliability as well. So coming back to point 3 on age appropriateness, so within the question or within options or any part of the question itself, what about the words that we are using? How do we make sure that those are age appropriate? So apart from what Garima ma'am mentioned about the topics of like politics and violence, how else would you make sure that the words are age appropriate? Anyone wants to try to answer this?
This is Hariram Joshi.
Yes, sir.
As far as the questions age appropriateness is concerned, for example, if a student, is the question should be based on the things or the knowledge which the students are expected for.
Yes.
It should not be too low or too high.
Yes.
If whatever experiences they have got so far, it should be according to that experience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So one more point here, which would make a question age appropriate, is apart from what you're testing, the language itself which you're using in the question. For instance, for a lower grade, if your options or your instruction has very long words or very complicated words, higher level vocabulary words, then that would not be age appropriate as well, right? So that's another way in which point 3 should be checked. If it's a lower grade question, even apart from the testing objective, the language of the question itself should be appropriate for them. Then point 4, I think we've covered this already, checking what it's expected to check, whether it's following the learning objective, whether it's testing a skill that is proper for that grade. The next one about the question in simple, straightforward, and understandable language. What does this mean to you? What does it mean if a question is simple, straightforward, and understandable? And what would be the criteria you would check for this?
Ma'am, I would like to say something. The
Yes.
question should be tricky. yeah, the language should be simple to understand, and we shouldn't put our knowledge of teacher there.
Yes,
We should make it simple. We should keep it straightforward.
yes,
It shouldn't be tricky. Yeah.
yes, exactly, ma'am. Any other points here? Anyone has any other thoughts on this point, point 5?
For 5 number point, I
Yes,
would like to add that the language should not be more idiomatic or figurative language should be
yes,
avoided to make it simple and understandable.
yes, exactly. Um, Another point here is that, yes, Amit sir, you wanted to say something?
I want to add one more thing in Hariram sir's statement.
Yes, sir.
The statement should not be complex. Means they should be simple. They should not be. We should avoid actually complex or compound sentences so that it becomes easy and understandable.
You mean avoiding complex or compound sentences where, sir? In which part of the question do you mean?
Means when we are just asking questions, the language of the question should be straight. Means we should avoid the complex. Means clauses. Grammatical complexity should not be there,
Right,
so that students feel difficulty to understand that.
right. Students should be able to understand what they have to do in the question
Yes.
without any doubts or ambiguity.
Yes.
So the next one, any other points on any other suggestions or examples on point 5 before we move ahead? All right, then point 6 is the question clear and free from mistakes. So how would you, what all would be covered in this point?
I
Ma'am,
think,
if we are, sorry, Garima, go ahead.
yeah, ma'am, please go ahead, Rajshri ma'am.
If suppose, ma'am, if we are making MCQ question,
Yes,
then we shouldn't give answers which are, I think, heterogeneous. Homogeneous answer should be there, and of course, grammatically should be correct. There
yes,
shouldn't be any mistakes.
yes,
Yeah, Garima, please, you go.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, this is the thing that I also wanted to mention is that if the question itself will be having mistakes, for example, if the question is in such a way that it may indicate for 2 or 3 answers, then
yes,
students may get confused and it will make a put a question mark over the question paper setter. So it should be free from grammatical errors, also from the ambiguous, or we can say that it should not give hint for more than one correct answers, in especially in MCQs. And the question should be clear. It means, I think the instructions should be so clear that student, the question that I asked earlier, that the instruction should be given in the question itself, that exactly what you want to check. So that should be clear. Language should also be clear. Instructions should be clear.
yes, exactly. And another point which we've touched upon slightly is that, like you mentioned, the answer which is given should be correct, right? So, especially in the case of maybe reading comprehension or analysis, where there's slightly more subjectivity, what one person or what the question creator has considered is the correct answer might not be the universal interpretation, right? So say I have created a question. I'm asking what is the author's tone in this first paragraph, and say maybe I think that the tone is a confused tone, or that the author is very sad in this paragraph. But maybe there are other possible interpretations which are there, which I've not thought about, which maybe Garima ma'am or Amit sir would think about. And so that's what another point is, that if there is any other possible answer that should either be accounted for, or the student should not be penalized for not answering that. So along with checking the question itself, if there is any scorecard or rubric or answer key along with it, we should check that the correct option has been marked, that all the possibilities have been covered, that it's not just one person's interpretation of that question, right? Also, one thing which happens a bit often is, of course, all of us are human. By mistake, if we've marked B instead of C as the correct answer, that should also be checked so that whoever is scoring it finally doesn't penalize students for giving a correct answer. So next point is on, I think Garima ma'am, you spoke about this, that there should be only one correct answer, and that the instruction should not make students think that multiple answers or multiple options can be correct. So this we've already covered. I'll move to the next one. Is the question free from any bias? So what would this mean, if anyone would like to go ahead?
Madam, it should not be based on the prejudices. For example, as I mentioned earlier, that for casteism or for gender,
Yes.
discrimination, and so it should not be based on that, so that it should not offend or it should not hurt anyone's feelings. Otherwise, it may raise again a question over the thinking of the question setter.
Yes, exactly. So exactly, in the question, maybe the context you are using or the passage you are using for context, for comprehension, or the tested sentence or the stimulus, none of these should have any biases related to gender or caste or nationality or any sort of thing. This is again where having an external review can help, because one person might not realize that any sort of implicit biases or internal biases are coming out, whereas a third person might be able to spot these and say, no, maybe this context should be changed, this sentence should not be used, and so on. Any other points here that anyone would like to mention for bias? Yes, no. If not, we'll move to the next point.
Although I have covered everything in caste, but I think it should not be based on religion, or
Yes.
it should not hurt anybody's religious feelings.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Rajshri ma'am, you had unmuted. Do you want to add something?
No, ma'am. Actually, Garima has already said the same thing. Actually, I wanted to ask my question in the last, but since I have unmuted myself, ma'am, still the point number 3 is not clear to me. Still, it is not clear to me. How will we decide whether the question is age appropriate or not? What are the parameters for that?
Right. So, of course, with language, this always becomes a bit complicated, right? Because with maths or with science, there is a much more clear demarcation saying that this exactly is there in grade 3, this is exactly grade 4, and so on. But with language, it is a bit more complicated, because apart from maybe grammar, which you say active and passive comes only in grade 7, direct and indirect voice comes only in this grade, and so on, we don't have as strict of a demarcation, right? So before I give my opinion on this, I think Amit sir, you have started saying something. Would you like to go ahead?
Actually, my response is for question number 8 about
Okay.
bias.
Okay.
So I just unmuted for only that.
Okay. So in that case, I'll come back to you, sir, once if anyone has any points on what Rajshri ma'am had asked. So, okay, if no one would like to go ahead, my opinion in this is that apart from certain specific grammar topics, which we can say as per the syllabus, this is only there in so many grades, or even with comprehension, that analysis of tone and mood is not there up until maybe grade 8, analysis of uh, maybe the main idea of the text can be there from grade 5 onwards, so on. It is a bit subjective. But overall, as language teachers, with the experience that everyone has, you do have an idea with certain things that, for example, a grade 3 student will not understand if I use words such as persuade, or if I ask students to extrapolate, or even the words which I'm using, the words which I'm testing. You have a general idea that this is not something that a grade 3 student will know. Similarly, you also would have from experience that if you ask maybe a grade 10 student the meaning of the word improve, or the meaning of the word review, that is much too simple for grade 10, and it's not something that you want to test at that level, right? So with language, it definitely is a bit more subjective, but one is that using the experience and knowledge that you have as teachers. The second is going by syllabus or going by textbooks itself. What are the types of words, types of vocabulary, types of contexts that are covered there? And I think a mix of these is what we have to refer to when deciding on age appropriateness.
Thank you, ma'am. It's clear to me now. Yeah. Thank you.
So yes, Amit sir, you wanted to answer about point 8. Is this question free from any bias?
I just want to add that the question that we are making, we should not include our ideology.
Yes.
Means there should be no space for a teacher's or a paper setter's ideology, because it will it is in itself is a biasness.
Yes, exactly. Do you want to give a further example of how maybe the paper setter's bias or ideology would come in with an example?
Okay. For example, we are just giving a comparison related to the government policies.
Yes.
Now, if my ideology is against a particular government, I should not put a question that shows my ideology. Means the question is based on my ideology. I should
Yes.
put question based on that particular comparison only.
Yes. Thank you, sir. I think this is a very important point that, especially when it comes to things like politics and society, teachers or paper setters should not be forcing students to adopt that ideology using the paper, or forcing students to read only one side opinion, or forcing students to maybe write an essay supporting only one side of politics, because that will be what the paper setter is thinking, and not necessarily what the students might do. You want students to form their own opinion and not just what the teacher is saying through the paper. Thank you, sir. I think that's a very important point. Any other points here for point 8? Okay, so then point 9 is the question not based on textbook format. What would this, what does this mean?
Ma'am, here I think blueprint will come. We will have to, the format is decided by the blueprint, which type of questions should be asked and what marks are assigned to those questions. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think that what you mentioned is covered in the learning objective, or the testing objective of what the question should have. But more than that, if what will happen if you give a question in a test which is exactly the same as what the textbook has asked? What would be the negative or the positive of that? Anyone has any comments on this? So say I've set a paper and yeah, Rajshri ma'am or Garima ma'am, both of you wanted to say something?
Yeah, ma'am. If we give questions directly given in the book, then they will become recalling sort of questions, because
Yes.
the student has already learned them. There will be no challenge for him. Yeah, it will only be remembrance.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Garima ma'am, you had wanted to say something?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to add the pros and cons both. So the positive aspect will be that students will get good answer, and the negative aspect will be that student will come under impression, okay, these type of questions will only be asked in the examination. So it will support their rote memorization, and coming in the exam and omitting the answer. So it will somewhere hamper their thinking skill also to learn or to go through the lesson thoroughly. So they will think that, okay, these type of questions will be asked, so we need not to work harder, we need not to understand, we just keep learning and writing. They won't try to even think, they won't try to analyze, they won't try to analyze that, and they won't try to think it logically. So this will be a thing which we don't want from our students. So learning pattern will also be changed.
Yes, exactly. Students will get used to just memorizing instead of thinking analytically or understanding and comprehending what they're supposed to. I think Hariram sir and Amit sir, both of you had unmuted. You wanted to say something?
Yes, this is Hariram Joshi.
Yes, sir.
The words textbook format.
Hmm.
I think each and every textbook is meant to develop certain skills or learning outcomes
Right.
for each level of grade. So, according to the textbook format, what the textbook is meant to develop in the learners. So, those things should be given in the questions. I think so.
Right. So that's a good point that the skills or the objectives which are covered in the textbook, those should definitely be included when you're assessing the student because that is what the textbook is trying to teach the student. But on the other hand, also it should not be exactly the same as what the textbook has asked because then, as Garima ma'am and Rajshri ma'am have said, students will just be memorizing the answers instead of understanding what the textbook has taught them. Uh, Amit sir, you were saying something?
Yes. I just want to put a question number 9 on a larger perspective, if you allow me.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Here we are talking about the only textbook format. I just want to add one point. If we are making question or framing question for a competitive exam or even an exam that is going to be held tomorrow,
Yes.
class 9 for model and excellence, student of district level excellence. So I want to discuss or I want to know what should be the format for these exams. I mean, we have not any textbook, but we have a defined syllabus.
Right.
Okay, so how should we know the question is based on that particular syllabus? For example, there is a paper for class 9th student, admission for in class 9th in model excellence or of the district level. So how would we assess that the question is based on the given syllabus, the syllabus that we have been given? So I just want to discuss and know. So if any of the team members can help me.
Right. Would someone like to answer this question or give their thoughts on this?
Because I do not want to just limit that 9 number means point into textbook format because it becomes easy to maintain that textbook format because we have the blueprint as Rashri ma'am rightly suggested that we have the blueprint to go into a certain direction. But
Right.
when we have only syllabus, okay, that you have to cover these points. Now, how would we assess that? Okay, that particular question is based on that syllabus or not? Because many a time that creates a lot of problem.
Right. So what you said about having the syllabus, right? So instead of the exact question format, your testing objective, your skills tested, your learning objectives, all of those are the ones that are coming from your syllabus, correct?
Yes.
Right. So as long as, so I think in previous workshops, you have discussed how to make a question for a given objective or for a given skill. So I think as long as that is covered, you are covering your syllabus. all this point 9 says is that it should not be directly a copy paste, or it should not be exactly the same as what a textbook or what the students have done in the class, because then they won't be thinking beyond just that notebook or just that textbook. So it's not saying that don't cover the skills in your syllabus, because the skills, the testing objectives, all of that is very different from the question format itself. So I think it shouldn't be a problem. Like textbook format, all of that will not hinder creating questions if you have your syllabus, because they're two separate things in my mind. Does anyone have any other points to add here which would help Amit sir?
Ma'am, I want to add one more point in that.
Okay.
When you are just having a competitive exam, okay, that is a one different thing. But when you have a having entrance exam of a particular class, means you have to put question for from the previous classes. So now it becomes more complex to frame a question. So now how would we judge that the question is based on these textbooks, the previous textbooks? Means we suppose that we are just making a paper for the class 11th entrance exam. Now we have to cover 6 up to 11th, 10th textbooks.
Yes.
So how to cover or how to check that these questions that we have made are based on these textbooks, all the 5 or 6 textbooks. Okay, if anyone could help me.
Would anyone like to give their opinion here?
Ma'am, this is Garima.
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, I was just listening Amit sir's concern about the question paper format, or if I specify textbook format. Yeah. So as far as I think, while setting the question paper, we should focus on the skills and on the topics which are covered. For example, if we talk about English, so suppose for a 7th standard student, if we are going to frame a question paper for 6th standards admission, so the things which are taught in 5th standard, for example, if noun is taught there, only the what is noun and their examples only, not the types, not the genders. So if a question paper is being formed for them, so the question should check whether the student understands or whether it can recognize the noun or not. So the question may be which is not a noun among these: flower, animal, good, and none of the above. So here, if a student has understood well what is a noun, so he will definitely point out, not going in very depth and very detail. I would just like to mention that the skill or the topic which has been taught in the class, so the question should be based on that, not exactly from the chapter. For example, a prayer to God or about Mahatma Gandhi, if a chapter is there, so that there we cannot, there that question may be asked.
Yes, exactly, ma'am. That's a good point. That even if you're having an entrance exam, as Amit sir asked, if you're covering the skills of the textbook and not the exact chapters or the exact questions itself, that should still that should be your goal. Rajshri, ma'am, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, ma'am. I would like to say, when we are making question papers for an entrance exam, the questions are based on the previous class,
Yes.
whatever was taught in previous class. And I think that's because of the thing, in each class, certain competencies are to be developed. And we just test those competency whether the child has developed or not.
Yes.
For 7th class, suppose he has, we are making question paper for entrance of 8th class. Then we will ask about the competencies which he developed in 7th. Suppose for grammar, suppose whether he knows about the simple sentence, complex sentence, or compound sentence, or whether he is aware of those concepts. So I think it is a matter of competency rather than textbook. Questions are not, we are asking that we are having those questions in our entrance exam. And I think that's because we are not aware of how to assess in a correct way. Yeah, uh, that's the problem, I think.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So, Amit sir, does this answer your question, or do you still you're not convinced, or any more clarification you
No, no,
want?
no. I'm very much convinced with both of the ma'ams, but I still have some little bit doubt. So I just
Okay,
want to
sir, go ahead.
actually it's just we discussed about how to frame question of those, but here we are discussing the review. Now
Yes.
we have framed a question
Mhm.
based on the previous year questions. Now how to review that question? Okay, is it good or not?
Right. So
So
in this case, all we are saying that you should check for is that it's not a direct copy of whatever textbook you're using. That's all that this point 9 means. Um, uh, Keeping in mind all the other points, that it's a skill which is appropriate, the language is fine, the correct answers are there, it's straightforward, it's a valid testing objective, so on. What point 9 just means is that it's not a complete copy paste of what's in the textbook, and it's something that the student is not going to have memorized in time for the exam. Does that answer your question, sir? When reviewing, this is what the reviewer
okay,
should.
okay, yes, yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your question.
I hope I have not taken so much time of everyone.
No, no,
So
it's good to discuss these
I had the
questions and
doubt,
to bring
so
them up.
that's why I asked.
No, not at all, sir. Thank you for bringing it up. It's good that we discuss these questions and make it clear, because then any sort of doubts which are there, that's what these workshops are for, right? To make sure that we can all help each other, and as a team, we can work towards making a better assessment for in Madhya Pradesh. Uh, so, any other points on part 9, or should we move to the 10th one?
Yes, ma'am, we can move ahead.
Okay, so the 10th one is the question testing, checking for misconceptions. So have we covered what misconceptions are, and would someone like to just explain what is a misconception and maybe give a few examples of misconceptions that students might have in language?
It is something like whether the student has proper understanding of the concept just
Exactly.
given in which is being checked, which is being assessed. So to check that, a question may be given and the options may have the apart from the correct answer, the other answers may be leading to the misconception only, so that it can be checked very easily. If a student selects the correct answer, it means he has the proper understanding of the concept.
Right. Yes, exactly. So if you have a question which is MCQ, and apart from your correct answer, maybe the distractors should have some of the common misconceptions of that concept. Any other points on misconceptions? Maybe any examples that anyone wants to give? Any misconception examples? Maybe in grammar, what's a common misconception that some of your students have?
Yeah, a simplest question is coming in my mind.
Yes, ma'am.
That it may be a question like the simplest one is that which form of verb is used in passive voice. So verbs first form, second form, third form, or ing form. So if the student is having proper understanding or proper knowledge that only third form is used, so he'll choose third form. Otherwise, he may choose some other form also.
Right. Yes, so exactly, an active passive, maybe a common mistake that students would make is using the wrong verb form. Similarly, in maybe direct and indirect speech, a common mistake is that students don't change the tense when they're shifting from one form to the other, or maybe the reporting verb doesn't get changed by the students, so on, right? So if your question can cover these misconceptions, it will also help as teachers, because then you'll know that not only has the student not understood this concept, this is the exact mistake which they have made, or this is the exact wrong idea that they have in their head. So this is something which then will help in the classroom to kind of remediate and maybe discuss and go over, so that for the next assessment or the next test, students won't make this mistake. Any other points here for this on misconceptions and how to see whether a question is testing a misconception? Maybe someone who hasn't spoken for a while, if you have any thoughts here.
Madam, I have a doubt here.
Yes, go ahead.
Only in MCQs we can go for misconception. Is it possible with long answer questions? How this answer will be wrong or right in that case? So
Right.
I think MCQs are the only way to check misconceptions.
Right. So MCQ definitely is an easy way to check for misconceptions, because you can directly control what the student might select, right? But if you know that this is a common misconception that students will have, even in open-ended or free response questions, you can do it. Of course, it'll be much easier in MCQs or short response questions, right? So for example, suppose you have a fill in the blanks question, which is again not MCQ, so students have to enter their own, where you're asking them to choose the right article to complete the sentence. So you have the word university, and students have to enter either a or an. So here you're not giving them an option, because they have to fill in with whatever article or whatever word they think will go there. But all the same, if when you're making the rubric, you'll know that if students have written a, they have understood that it's the vowel sound, a university. Whereas if they've written an, they probably have this misconception that they just have to look, and if it's a vowel itself, without thinking of the sound of the word, they have to use an. So while you're not giving options here, when creating the question, you still have this mistake in mind. So you want to see how many students are going to make this mistake. So accordingly, while the rubric might not change, while the test itself might not change, you'll still get an understanding from this question in the test of how many students have this mistake, and whether you need to cover it again in the class, or whether you need to revise this with those students and so on. So it's not as easy as it is for MCQs, but there are still ways in which, by looking at the responses that students make, you can see whether there is a pattern there that many students are making this similar type of mistake.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other thoughts here on misconceptions?
Ma'am, transformation of sentences, or for short answer question, we may give question that what is alliteration. If a student has proper understanding of this concept, then only he will be able to answer what is written. He can only give the example. So this may also be, can this also be an example of checking for misconception?
So, ma'am, in your example, just to make sure I've understood, you're asking what is alliteration, and seeing whether students can explain what alliteration is, or if they can only give an example.
Yes, ma'am. That of we can also take transformation of sentence. For example, a very simple sentence which generally comes in the exams, that I did it. So make the negative of it. The students have only understanding that where did we can use did not. Then they don't understand that did is used as helping verb or as mean verb. So that concept, that sentence can also be used as checking for misconception.
Right. So if you know that this is a common error that students make, that students might be having this wrong thought that when converting I did it to a negative sentence, they won't change the verbs accordingly. They won't, they'll just add a not and not add another do. If you know that this is a common error, then yes, when creating this question itself, you are making room for this misconception to be tested. So as a reviewer, then, when you're looking at this as a peer reviewer of this question, if you also see that, okay, the students will make this common mistake, and this question is seeing whether the student is going to separate the students who know the answer from those who will make this common mistake, then yes, even subjective questions like the one you mentioned can come under this point.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other comments or examples here that you want to discuss? Yes, Amit sir.
I just want to add one more example, as Garma ma'am said,
Yes,
that
sir.
generally a student has a conception, okay, that only verb third form is used in a passive voice, and many of the students understand that by is always used as preposition. Okay,
Yes.
so we can put four questions, okay, or to identify, okay, identify the sentence which is in passive form. Okay,
Yes.
now we can put a question, put some alternative that have by, but they are not in passive form. For example, I went here by bus, so now that can lead them to misconception. I mean, yes, they can take it wrong. They can take it as passive voice, or otherwise we can use I have visited Simla by bus many times. So
Yes.
these are the questions that we can put as alternatives. So it will check their misconceptions.
Yes, exactly. So that is again from the point of the question maker, you have to take all of these. So now suppose you are the reviewer, right? And you notice that a question on passive voice, like the one that you described, does not have any such options. And you know that this is a common mistake which students can make. Then as a reviewer, now what will you do? You will suggest that the question maker will maybe add one of these as the options, right? So this is another way in which, again, review will help in that if maybe the creator has not thought of this misconception, like the one which Amit sir has said, if the reviewer has caught it, then they can say, no, these two options are not going to test any misconception. Maybe we can replace this option with uh, an option like the one that Amit sir has mentioned. Any other points here for this, or do you want to move ahead? Or any other last thoughts on any of these parameters?
Yes, ma'am, we can move ahead.
Okay. So now we are going to do an activity. We're going to look at some questions that were created and see how, as reviewers, these can be improved. So this is the first question, okay? Is everyone able to see it on my screen? Yes, no, are you able to see the question?
Yes, ma'am, we are able to see.
Okay, so the first thing would be, all of you, if you can please just read the question and see what would be your choice for the correct answer here. And also keep in mind, if you are the reviewer for this question, what points would you tell to the creator to improve this question? Okay, was everyone able to read this question? So first, if as a reviewer you're given this question, what would you say that the correct answer is this? Is there a correct answer? Are there multiple correct answers? What are your thoughts on this question? Anyone can go ahead. Any thoughts that you have? Imagine that you are the reviewer for this question now. Would someone like to volunteer to start, or otherwise I'll have to call names? Pankaj sir, would you like to, what are your thoughts on this question? If you are the reviewer for this question, what would you tell the question maker? There's no correct or wrong answer here. It's just what's your opinion on this question? Can you hear me? Hello, am I audible?
Okay, ma'am, I would like to volunteer
Yes, go ahead,
for
ma'am.
the discussion here. Yeah, I think actually the question is not visible here. But I think I read the question earlier. I like the popcorn that my father makes best. I think that's the
Yes,
question.
that's the question, and it's asking which option means the same as this sentence. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit.
I do not. I like popcorn because my father makes it well. No one makes the popcorn. Confusion. Confusion is creating confusion. I do not like popcorn. Yeah, negatives are also there.
Okay, is this better? Right. So from these,
Ma'am, I think for me, fourth one is the right answer.
fourth one is the right answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you say that this is the ideal answer in your mind, or if you were clearing this question, would you have given this option?
No, ma'am, I don't think so. Because I think the personality of the question maker also comes because I am a simple person and I like to ask simple questions which are easily understood by the students.
Right.
So
So you,
yeah,
you feel that this is not very easy for students to understand, then it's
yeah.
a bit convoluted. So yes, that's one point. I think Hariram sir, you were also saying something.
Yes, actually, the sentence which has been given,
Hmm.
I like the popcorn that my father makes the best. If my father makes better, then I would not like. This meaning is also coming from the sentence actually.
Right. So you're
I
saying
like
that,
the popcorn, only the popcorn that my father makes the best. If he makes better or well, the person does not like. This also the meaning this also coming in my mind actually. So the options given here, I think no option according to me, as I have explained the sentence, no option is given there.
right. So you feel that none of these options really cover the meaning that you have interpreted it. Right. Any other points on this question before we see uh, not the answer, but we see what the reviewer of this question has also said?
Ma'am, it's Pankaj Mishra.
Yes, sir.
What Joshi sir is saying means that the question itself, the statement
Yes.
which is given as question has somewhat ambiguity
Yes.
because it makes two senses, and his perception is quite valid.
Right. So the question is not very clear and there are multiple interpretations. So as a viewer, you feel that you would ask the question maker to change this part because as you and Hariram sir have said, the options don't cover this other interpretation that you've made.
No, but Rashri madam chose the option, and that one is clearly correct. But it may have another interpretation as Joshi sir stated.
Right. And so, yes, as a reviewer, that is also a valid point which you have to keep in mind. And if there are multiple interpretations like this, then needs to make sure that the question is covering that. So I think I changed the slide by mistake, but this is, are you able to see this comment here? So what this commenter has said is very similar, that the meaning which you can interpret it as is not clearly there in any of the options. So this reviewer has suggested that you change the option so that the correct answer is something different. So then the next one, are you able to see this question?
Ma'am, question is not visible. Yeah, now it is.
Okay.
Ma'am, multiple answers may be correct because will drink is also correct and drinks is also correct.
Yes. Correct, ma'am. Multiple possible answers are there. So this, again, as the reviewer, you would say that this is not an appropriate question for students. Whether students choose drinks or will drink, both answers will be correct. Any other points here which you want to know?
Yes, ma'am, I have a different view. If we use present progressive in this
Yes.
context, then instead of every day, there must be now.
Yes.
So I think the question is valid. It looks like somewhat tricky, but it's a valid question,
okay.
in my opinion.
Sir, do you feel that it will be right to say Charlie will drink milk every day? Would that be a correct?
Charlie drinks milk every day.
Charlie drinks milk every day, but we can also say Charlie will drink milk every day, right?
No, ma'am, for me, two options are correct. The third and fourth.
Ma'am, excuse me, sir. Garma ma'am says that first option is drinking can also be applied. And I think it should not be applied in this context because if we use present progressive, then it must be Charlie is drinking milk now, not every day.
Yes, Garima ma, I think mentioned option C and D, not is drinking. So is drinking present and past progressive is also definitely wrong. But the third and the fourth option, drinks and will drink, both of those can be used correctly, right, sir?
Yes.
Right. So you're correct that present progressive cannot be used, but simple present and simple future both are correct here. So this is exactly what the reviewer has said as well of this question, saying that simple future is still a meaningful question. So the question creator has gone back and changed the options to this. So has changed simple future to present perfect. So now is this question fine?
Yes.
Right.
This is fine.
So now we'll move to the next question. Again, similarly,
Ma'am,
yeah.
I want to add one thing here. The question is fine now, but it is not checking the misconceptions. So I would rather say that if we make slight correction in the question as well as in the options. For example, if I add now, comma, Charlie drinks milk every day, and then put up an option drank. Okay, so now it will make student understand the difference between present and past as well.
Right. So
with every day we must put now or such thing that indicates present as well, and then put the second form as well. So it will make more clear to the student. Okay, that is the difference between present and past.
Right. So
Means it will clear its misconception.
Yes, sir. That's a very good point. That while this question now doesn't have any ambiguities, we can improve the question by testing an extra misconception as well. that whether the student can tell the
Yes.
difference between the simple present and simple past. So yes, that's definitely a point that you can mention as a reviewer here. Any other points on this?
I like you to elaborate more on the correction of this topic, which is presented in the slide.
Right. So, so as we mentioned in when looking at just the question, both drinks and will drink were possible correct answers here, right? It's correct to say Charlie drinks milk every day, and it's also correct to say Charlie will drink milk every day. So, in order to correct this, the reviewer has said there are two options which are correct. Please change one of the options so that only one answer can be correct here. So now the correction is that if you hold on, let me try and zoom in.
Okay, okay. Will drink has been deleted.
Yeah, will
Okay.
drink has become has drunk. So now you
Okay.
cannot say Charlie has drunk milk every day. That's an awkward phrasing. So now there's only one correct answer. And
Okay, sir. Sorry, I missed seeing that. Thank you.
okay, yes. So now the next question. Let me zoom in. Is this visible? So this is an example of a free response, a short free response, single word answer question with two parts. As a reviewer, what would you suggest to this question? So for this one, keep in mind also that we discussed misconceptions, right? But one point is that it should not go to the extent that we're tricking the student. While we're trying to test for a misconception, we don't want to accidentally make the student choose. We don't want to direct the student towards the wrong answer. That will be unfair to the student, because then as a teacher, if we're trying to suggest that they have to choose the wrong answer, we can't blame them if they have chosen the wrong one then. So keep that one in mind and see if we're reviewing this question, how would we use that principle?
I think second question is more correct. I mean, more appropriate. Fill in the blank with the correct form of the verb sing.
Okay, would you like to explain why you're saying that, ma'am?
It is because the first question is directly asking. So it is not checking the conception. And in second one, it is checking the conception with the circumstance or with the time which is given, whether student is able to use properly.
Right.
I mean, is he able to check the which form of verb is used at what time?
Yes.
With which sense? So that second one is checking more appropriately. That's
Right.
the second.
So the first one is a very mechanical thing where it's just asking for memorization of what is the different forms of the verb, whereas the second one is putting it in a context and seeing if the student can apply it. Any other points here? Anything else? Yes.
In other words, what Garma madam said, to furthering that, first one is mechanical or based on understanding, and second question is based on application.
Right. Yes, sir. So yes, this point is correct. Any other things, any other point on this question? So suppose you're giving both of these together as part A and part B of the same question. What do you think students would answer?
First one is sung and second one is sang.
Yes, that's the correct answer. But if you're giving it in this way, do you think that students would see past participle and assume that, okay, this entire question is testing past participle? So if
The student may think that, okay, these two questions are given. So in both the questions, the same form cannot be given. So if if he knows proper past participle form, then he will think that, okay, now the first form is already given here. Third form I have filled. So definitely the second question will be having the second form. So in that way, the student will get answers spontaneously. I mean, the answer in the
we'll get
he
the
will get
answer,
the
but
answer.
not through understanding, but through sort of a hint from the question itself, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly, ma'am.
So yes, we don't want that to happen as well. So something similar is what this reviewer has also said, which is that the first part is leading the child towards thinking in a certain way. So even without understanding the language, they might give an answer for the second part. So then this was the correction of it. That now both the points which you had mentioned, one is that it's testing mechanically whether they can memorize what participle is, that has also been covered, and also that little hint which is that, okay, part one and these two verb forms have been used, so only the remaining one must be there. That's also been covered. Do you agree with this correction?
Yes, ma'am. Here, students is not getting any hint whether to fill the same form or the second and third form differently.
Right. Okay, so then
Okay, I have a query.
yes, sir.
Hello.
Hello, yes, sir.
Yes,
want
Pankaj
to
sir.
know,
Apu.
I want to know the meaning of the second column digits, 121 and 85.
Which one, in this question or the
Uh,
previous one, sir?
previous slide.
Oh, this one. So this it's showing the results of this question, showing how many students had chosen
Okay, okay.
each of those answers. So this is actually an old question that we had used, and we've pulled up. So this is just the data from that question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, I have something to discuss
Yes, sir.
about that Singh verb.
Yes.
Actually, I have a doubt about my conception or something else. And so I think Hariramji or Pankaj sir, who can respond to me? Hariramji, I'm just, Hariramji, are you audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Proceed, proceed.
Sir, please let me know. The actually reviewer has made the correction last month. She had, as far as I remember, I think this is also the grammatically wrong correction. Last month we cannot use the past participle form. It always goes in the past simple form. Last month, last year, last night, last day. So can we use she
Actually,
had?
those two. Should I say something now?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
sir. If
Please
you'd like to
proceed.
respond, go ahead.
Actually, those two sentences were written connected to each other, and two actions were taking place there. One in the past, last month. So past of past is past perfect tense actually. That's why the second one having had third form, and the first one is even then last month is used. We can say she sang a song yesterday, but when we express the event past, past or the before the near past action, distant past actually we should say. So that was in distant past. Last month she had song. That is why both the
In
sentences are
connectivity,
correct.
in connectivity, we can say so. But in separately, I
Connection
think.
is there. Connection is
Uh,
there actually.
Yes, sir. This is one single question which is going to the student with both the blanks together. So students will get both of these sentences in this question.
okay, then it's okay. But okay, thank you, sir. Ramji, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And thank you for your question. Any other points on this, or do you want to move to another one? Okay.
Now,
So now say, suppose this question is for grade 6 or grade 7. Okay. Um, what do you think about the let's look at two things. One is, of course, the correct answer. Second is the language of this question. So keeping these in mind, how would you review this? So if this is for grade 6 or 7, what would be your comments on this as a reviewer? So first, let's check the correct answers. Is there a single correct answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
The
so there,
correct answer is paying the money.
yes. So that's clear. There are no multiple possibilities, or there's no ambiguity in that, right?
Yeah.
Good. So then, what's the next thing we can see in this question? The skill says it's understanding idioms, proverbs, and figures of speech. Is this testing that? Is it covering the testing, the learning objective in the skill?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so now let's look at then age appropriateness. If this is for grade 6 and 7, do you think this is fine for that grade?
Just wrong.
Sir, I'm not able to hear you if you're speaking. So is there anything in this question, anywhere in this, which would make it extra difficult for grade 6 or 7?
Certain words like
Yes, ma'am.
enthusiastic and reluctant.
Right.
So these words are for higher grades, I think, not
Yes.
for 6 or 7 grades.
Yes, exactly. So though these are not being tested here, students who are reading this might find it extra difficult, and especially since they have to get the meaning of footing the bill, that would make it even more difficult for them to understand, because you're adding words like reluctant here. Any other points that you would tell to the question maker here? Anything else that you would want to change in this question?
Ma'am, actually, what is happening in this question is we are also testing the student's knowledge of vocabulary, whether
Yes.
he knows meaning of enthusiastic or reluctant, as sir said.
Yes.
So it is making the question more difficult.
Yes, exactly. You're unnecessarily
And
making
the objective was whether the student understand the expression underlined here or not.
Yes, exactly. So even apart from just the options, the correct answer in this, we also need to check and make sure that other words, other instructions, all of that are as simple and appropriate for that grade. So this is what this reviewer has said as well. They have asked. Oh, 1 second. They have asked the creator to change the words reluctant and enthusiastic. And another thing is that one maybe the context or a bias or something there was that about a groom's father and saying this is how the groom's father is going to behave. So this reviewer has also said maybe better to avoid the context of saying that a groom's father is behaving this way. So now the new sentence has become this: the basketball coach was very enthusiastic about organizing the party, but was not equally enthusiastic about footing the bill. So now the word reluctant has been removed, and the context of groom's father, which might be a bit sensitive, which might be a stereotype, that's also been removed. So is there any other suggestion in this? You are saying that maybe enthusiastic is also a bit difficult. So as a reviewer, if you feel that, you could suggest that as well. Any other points here, or is this question fine now?
Excited.
Excited? What about it? You're saying that
Means it's a
enthusiastic.
common word to understand for a grade 6 or 7, or means for the student in general.
Okay, so you're saying instead of enthusiastic, we can say excited.
Yes.
Right. So yes, this is another possible edit you can make to this question to make sure that only footing the bill is the part that the student needs to worry about.
Yes.
So again, next question for maybe a grade 7. Here as well, what are some of the words that you might want to change to make it appropriate for grade 7?
Ma'am, the sentence is not visible to me.
Oh, okay, let me try and zoom in. Is this visible now or still?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay.
Ma'am, now, ma'am, you have zoomed it more than enough. You have zoomed more than enough. The D option is not visible now.
Oh, we're not able to see option D. Okay, is this option D
No,
is
no,
still?
no, no. Just minimize a bit.
Is this fine?
Okay. Yes. Now it's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So here again, are there some words which would not be fine for grade 6, grade 7? Okay, so since this is similar to the previous one, I'll not go into much detail here, but here again, some maybe words like persuade might be unnecessarily tough. So here the reviewer has said you can use simpler words for this. Here as well, it's the same one. So I'll just skip to this since we are reaching the time limit. Okay, so now this question, are you able to see it?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am is zoomed full. Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay, so here, what would you say is the correct answer here? And are there any points for review?
Ma'am, I think C answer.
C is the correct answer. Arthos, difficult.
I opine the same.
Okay, is again, if this is for a grade 7 or 8, do you feel that they can easily find the answer?
No, 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 not at all.
Certain words are difficult, maybe difficult for 6th and 7th standard students.
Okay. What about option D here? Do any of these options seem too close to option to the correct answer, apart from just one?
C and D both are confusing. I mean, multiple correct answers.
Right. So even if there's only one marked as correct, many of them are very close. So a student might not know which one to choose because very similar in meaning, right? So now
Right.
if this has been the change, that D has become wild and dangerous. Now it's no longer linked to being difficult and hard to climb and taking energy. So this would be, is this better for you or do you still want more change? Right, so is this a better option now?
Yeah, now C1 is the better answer, better option.
Okay. Let me see if I can find another example. Yeah, here. If you're reviewing this, what would be your comment?
Ma'am, the question is not visible. Your options are visible, but question is not visible.
Okay, now?
Yeah.
Okay, what would be the answer here? It's asking about punctuation. Are you able to see the commas and full stops used? Is it clear? Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's
Okay.
clear.
So what would you say is the correct answer here? If only one answer is supposed to be correct, what would you say?
Is it D?
Okay, so D is one answer. Any other points here that you notice about this question? So apart from D, is there any other option which could be correct here?
Ma'am, I think C is the right answer.
Yeah, C is also correct.
Okay, what about A? Would A also be correct? Hello, any comments?
Ma'am, I think A1 cannot be considered as correct answer.
Okay, but you're saying that C and D are both correct. So one issue in this question that there's more than one correct option again. So this is what the reviewer would have to tell to the student, to the creator, sorry. So now this is what the question has been changed to. Now,
So, ma'am, what is the correct answer for this? And
so now in this corrected version, D is the only correct option. In all the other options, they've added commas in different places. So do you agree with this? If this is supposed to be the question now after the change?
yes, ma'am, now C is not the correct one
Yes.
because the comma has been put after was.
Yes. So again, so this level of check will have to be done as a reviewer just to make sure that even if it's a typo mistake or just a miss, that also should be checked. Let me see if, since we're close to the time, let me see if I can find a different type of error that we haven't seen yet. Okay, so now this question, looking at the entire question, what would you suggest to the creator? So first, are there any difficult words in this question? Is it appropriate? Is it a simple question for the student?
Ma'am, question is not visible.
Huh? This one, fill in the blank with the correct word. Ravi's father is 160 centimeters, blank.
Ma'am, multiple correct answers are possible as up is also correct here, high is also correct, and tall may also be correct. So the options must be changed because most of the options are indicating either height or the distance or the length. And the centimeters is used for all these three things. It may be height also, it may be length also, it may be um,
So, are you able to still see my screen? I think I lost connection for a bit.
yeah, ma'am, this is Garima from Chinwara. I was saying that in this question, multiple answers are may be correct because it is not mentioned clearly whether we are talking about the length or the height or the distance. And the
Right.
centimeters is a unit which is used with all the three, height
Right.
also, length also, and distance
Just
also.
specify that you're talking about his height.
Yeah, correct.
What else in this
Exactly.
question? Why don't we look at the learning objective and the skills that are tagged?
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, it is not focused on the thing which it is being asked because
Right. So would you say that this is more of a grammar question or a vocabulary question?
definitely grammar question.
Okay, but you feel that like this skill which is tagged is not the appropriate skill. It's not exactly um, this. Is that what you're saying, ma'am?
Yeah, exactly. I want to say this.
Okay. Right. So sorry. There are 2 points here. One is that some of the options can give more context, and that maybe the skill can be a different skill. So this particular creator has chosen to make it synonyms and antonyms, choosing the correct synonym to use. Do you feel that skill would work here, or would you again suggest a skill change? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Skill learning outcome should be changed.
Right. So now we've covered quite a few different points that we might want to look at when we are reviewing, starting from the skill, which is testing whether the correct answers are actually correct, whether the instruction is clear, whether the question is accidentally leading students to choose one option or leading students or giving a hint to the students, so on. So now I think we had asked as homework for all of you to prepare some questions, right? So just to wind up, let's use the same things that we have discussed so far today and review the questions that you have made. So I think you were given a passage to read and to make questions based on that on Margaret Derrell and Gerald Derrell. I don't have an image. I think this you might not be able to read it on my screen. Do you have access to that? I think this was included as part of the assignment. So if you have it with you, can you just maybe read it as a refresher so that when we're looking at the questions, we'll be able to use this passage to review them? So now as a reviewer, as a peer reviewer, we'll check these questions and see if there's any point which we can think of from what we've discussed today that we can edit in these questions. So again, like we discussed yesterday, this is a comment on the question itself. It's not a comment on anyone. And again, just because someone has made the question doesn't mean that only one person's question will be perfect. Everyone's question, which we see, there'll always be ways in which we can improve it, ways in which an outside perspective can suggest changes which the creator themselves might not have thought of, and so on. So would you like to so now maybe someone who hasn't spoken yet, and except maybe Rajyasree ma'am, since this is your question, can we see if there's any point we'd want to suggest for reviewing these? This is based on the passage that was included.
The first one, why did Margaret find it difficult to run the guest house? I think that will make the meaning clear.
Right. So you can say that maybe we can rephrase this to make it clearer.
Yes.
That's a good point. Anything else that anyone wants to suggest? Okay, if no other comments on the first one, can we move to the second question? This one?
No, it's questions are not visible on the screen.
Okay, let me try zooming in more.
Everybody can slide the screen on his or her own, and then it will be seen actually. है ना? It happens. We have slided.
In that way also it is not visible, sir.
Is it visible
Not
now?
even moved.
Are you able to see it now? Any comments here? Are you able to see the question? Is everyone able to see the question?
Yes, ma'am. Now I'm able to see. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So any suggestions to review this question? No comments? I know it's getting close to lunchtime, but we'll just wrap up after this. So the sooner we can finish, the sooner sooner we can finish this activity, the sooner we'll be able to go for lunch.
In the second question, the first option, the children were breeding mice. It is giving not clear meaning actually.
Okay. Any other points here, sir? Or anyone else wants to add? Nothing here? So then should we move to the next one? So do you have the passage in front of you to refer to so that while reviewing it will be easier for you to understand the questions and the context? Okay, so fine, let's move to the next question then. Here, any comments? Anything? Would anyone like to go ahead? Again, uh, it's all, we're all teammates here, so no need to feel any awkwardness about reviewing each other's questions or about right or wrong answers. It's just a way for all of us to improve and to get practice with question creation and review.
Ma'am, I'm ready to be butchered.
Ma'am, now after discussing all of these points, do you have any points that you yourself would edit in your question?
Actually, ma'am, what we learn from our workshops and when we design the questions, it's really difficult, I will like to say, to transfer our knowledge, whatever we learn, and it's really difficult to apply it when making designing questions. And when I made these questions, I was in a little bit hurry because I saw this assignment very late in the night, and I had to go in the morning. So I quickly did something. Yeah, I have to complete my task. So I wasn't very, I should say, what should I say? I read the passage 2, 3 times, and I didn't find anything how to use a question for application. It was, I don't know, madam, if you could show any other teammates question, then maybe.
No problem, ma'am. So
Is it really testing the skill? I would like to discuss this in the group. Is it really testing the application skill here? That's my question to all of my teammates.
yes, would anyone like to respond? In your opinion, after everything that we have discussed today, what are your thoughts here? Is it testing the skill of application?
On my part, this question needs application, the learner, to know the purpose of the author's writing this paragraph. Certainly includes analysis, understanding all these things. So this question is testing the skill for which it is made.
Thank you, sir. So yeah, I also feel that this is testing analysis of seeing whether they can understand the author's intent, the author's point of view. So I think this is something that's testing application. Uh, any other points here, or do you want to move to the next one? So again, as Rajshri ma'am had mentioned, thank you, ma'am, for taking the time to write this. I know that you must also have been very busy and to take time from your schedule. And that is something that will likely happen with all of us when we are making questions, that there might be a strict deadline. There might be maybe at late at night only you get to know that something needs to be done. So it is there is a possibility that questions might be made maybe in a hurry, or that you might have limited time to make a question. So in that case, again, as a reviewer, that's what makes it important to see that if there are any small mistakes or any ways to improve the question, how can teammates help each other to make sure that the best outcome is there. So then now let's see the next batch of questions. Is this visible?
Yes, visible.
Okay. would you, anyone would like to comment on this question, give any points for reviewing? If there are no comments as well, that's also fine. You can say that so that we can move to the next one. Anything?
Madam, question is okay, mechanical sort of question. I think there's nothing wrong with this question. It's
Okay.
testing the skill which, yeah, it is meant to test.
Okay. Any other points here, or do you want to move to the next one? Okay, so now the second question. Any comments?
Ma'am, this is Amit Gupta.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I was busy in training, so I could not frame question answers, and I could not see. But so I do not know that for which class they have been made. But if they are for the lower grades, I think question number 2 needs a bit correction in terms of vocab. Means we should avoid the term like resemblance. We should use some easier word because it is a bit means higher
We can,
vocab.
Amit sir, we can use similar instead of
Yes,
resemblance. Yeah.
yes.
Right. So, what is the question testing? What is the objective here?
Is actually testing the, it is based on mechanical, I think, because if the learner knows the meaning of word, then he can easily understand that the similar meaning of the word or the dissimilar meaning of the word he can easily find. So it is not on understanding, I think it is mechanical.
Okay.
Yes, I agree with Ariram sir. If we have asked that word in a way to use in a sentence or in a paragraph, so that could be understanding. But here it is mechanical.
Okay, right. What is the skill being tested here? So now we've looked at the objective. What about the skill or the concept being tested?
Vocabulary, especially synonyms.
Synonyms. Right. So then, is there a simpler way to maybe ask the question? So, my opinion as a reviewer might be that asking about resemblance or similarity, it might be confusing to the student, right? So instead, can we say similar meaning or same meaning instead, so that it's clear?
Yes, that is what I
Yes.
mentioned earlier.
Okay. Right. So anything else in this question? Any other points?
I think the one thing that we I think discuss in reviewing the question about the language of simple, direct, and straight. Okay, so does not have instead of does not have we should say that which is not similar is the framing of the question may be different, grammatical pattern, complexity.
Sorry, sir, your voice was cracking a bit. I missed your last point.
Means it has a complexity when we are using a term does not have resemblance. It means we can directly say that find out the term which is not similar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So we
So,
can make it simple. We can rephrase it to make it simpler. Right.
yes, it is a complex one when we are saying does not have the even we are saying that it does not have the similarity or it does not have the similar meaning. Mean we can avoid the term does not have the we can use is not similar, is not synonym. We can use these terms
Right.
this way.
We can use the simplest framing that's possible.
Okay. Yes.
Third question. This is a free response question. I think. Any points here?
Madam, it is testing the skill application for which it has been created, this question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
The
no further
student will try to find the relate those sentences from the passage uh, which have some context with this sentence. Africa had arrived in style. So he will look for those sentences and he will try to understand their meaning.
right.
Yeah.
So connecting this to the discussion we've had today as well as yesterday, can we add some details to this so that the student knows what exactly they'll be tested on?
Word limit could have been mentioned here. Or
Okay, word limit. What else is it possible to add? Or as a student, if nothing as well, you can say that no, this is clear enough. What's your opinion on that? Like, what else is it possible to add, or do you feel should be added?
it could also have been added that mention at least 3 points, 3 keywords, or 3.
Okay. Right. So we can maybe add a bit more detail to this, mentioning maybe a word limit or asking students to mention at least 3 examples or 3 points. Okay. Any other points on this, or we'll just move to the last one? So, ma'am, I think this one you've made on a different passage, right? Ma'am, you've made this on a different passage. Which has everyone read this poem, the childhood poem, or is it from somewhere outside?
Yeah, this is from class 10, class 11th.
Okay. Uh, are uh, are all of you familiar with this poem in order to review this passage? If not, in order to review the questions. If not, we'll have to maybe like we won't be able to review it for now. Yes, no, we're almost done. I know that you must be tired Saturday, you must be hungry, but we're almost done here. Any responses? Okay, if there's nothing, I think we can just move ahead. So just to summarize what we've done today, you can refer to this table. We've talked about reviewing questions, and these are some of the points we should keep in mind when we're reviewing questions. First is, of course, the distractors and the correct answer, whether the answer that's marked is correct, whether the distractors are testing misconceptions but are not too easy or too close to the correct answer, whether the concept or the skill or the objective itself is good for that grade, and the question is testing the skill that it says it is. Third is whether the instructions are clear, the words that are used are appropriate for that grade, the length of the question is appropriate for the grade, whether the context is something that's relatable for students, whether it's something that students will be able to understand, that they'll find interesting and there's no bias or stereotype in it. And finally, whether there are no grammatical issues, typos, spelling errors, and so on. So here we can wind up with this today. If everyone could just mention one point on what they can take away from today's session, we'll just wind up with that. Just one by one, whoever would like to go first, to go ahead and just 1 or 2 points on what you've got from today's session.
When we are reviewing the questions, we should keep certain parameters in our mind. I would like to mention one. Our question should not be biased. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Next, who would like to just say maybe one point that they've picked up from today?
Yes, following Rajshri ma'am, I would like to mention one parameter, that is, it should check the skill which it is meant to be. I mean, it should be worth testing.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
To add to it, I would like to say that the question should be simple, straightforward, and understandable.
Yes, thank you, sir.
And it is also age appropriate.
Yes. Next, who would like to go ahead? Amit sir, would you like to speak? Mukesh sir or Pankaj sir, anything that you would like to say, what you've taken away from today's session?
Thank you, ma'am. Well, I think reviewing a paper is as much difficult as creating it. So we have learned a lot of things from it. Like there are a lot of consideration which we should take into account, and like some of them uh, have been mentioned by my team. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Amit sir or Pankaj sir, anything you'd like to add?
I want to say that reviewing in itself is a particular skill, and we have to process many mental faculties there. And after reviewing, we are just get prepared to make a question which is free, or at least if not wholly, at least free from all the errors which are possible,
Right.
and comes close to the testing objectives. So reviewing in itself empower us to frame right questions.
Yes, that's a good point. Thank you, sir. Amit sir, anything you would like to add, and then we'll wind up.
Okay, thank you. I would say that I would not say that it is difficult. I would not use difficult word. I would say that both framing question and reviewing question is a Herculean task, as we know the now technicalities behind these things, and we must not take these things for granted. Now, that is what I have understood. So for the when we now we will do these things, we will take these things into consideration. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So that winds up our session for today. I think Deepa had wanted to just wrap up with another exercise. Deepa, if you want to go ahead, if we have time.
Sure. I think we're running out of time, so maybe we can do it on the WhatsApp group. But sorry, I really like the summary that all of y'all said. Particularly just the fact that no one has it's not a one person job, like to make a question and make sure it's a perfect question. Like a question becomes perfect through the process of reviews. So like that is very important. So no one should think like I have to like master all these skills and become like the perfect question maker. Like as you saw when we were sharing the questions from our system, we all work on making questions for a living for the last a lot of people have done it for at least a decade. But yeah, we still review each other's questions, we still give comments, and we improve through the process of comments. So review is, again, like everyone said, like a very important process. um, Apart from this, there will be okay, so back to the logistic, there will be a feedback form, and there is a post test that all of you will have to submit. Abhi, it's becoming very close to lunchtime, so I don't want to force you all to do it right now. So I will post it on the group. Please submit it today. Or maybe y'all can collectively as a group tell me a time by when y'all can submit it. So tell me a time that works. It should take you about 20 minutes to finish both the forms.
Ma'am, I have a request to make. So I think everybody will agree for that. जो आपका फीडबैक या प्री टेस्ट पे पोस्ट है ना, उस टेस्ट से वो बायलिंगुअल हो तो ज्यादा बेहतर है, क्योंकि जो तकनीकी शब्द है वो हिंदी में बहुत ज्यादा कठिन से लगते हैं, कई बार समझना मुश्किल हो जाता है। तो अगर बायलिंगुअल हो तो ज्यादा अच्छा है, प्री टेस्ट और पोस्ट टेस्ट।
Okay. Sure.
That is a request, if we can do that.
ठीक है सर, I can't assure इस टाइम के लिए हो पाएगा, but we'll keep that feedback in mind for next time for sure.
I think you can और लोगों से भी पूछ सकते हैं कि भाई how they feel that. मुझे थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट लगता है वो।
Yeah, sir. Amit sir, I agree with you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry.
Seeking support.
Last point, अमित सर, आपकी आवाज कट रही थी, like I think आपको नेटवर्क की वजह से, maybe let me go to a better network area. Can you repeat the last point you made?
मतलब मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि जो हम प्री टेस्ट और पोस्ट टेस्ट आप देते हैं वो बायलिंगुअल हो तो ज्यादा अच्छा है, क्योंकि हिंदी की जो टर्मिनोलॉजी है वो कई बार कठिन हो जाती है, तो वो समझ से परे हो जाती थी। जो टेक्निकल टर्मिनोलॉजी है वो दैट बिकम्स डिफिकल्ट टू अंडरस्टैंड, तो इट विल बी इजी टू अंडरस्टैंड इफ इट इज इन बायलिंगुअल फॉर्म।
Got it.
If possible.
It is possible. So next time we will try to do that. इस बार ही शायद ना हो पाए, but अगली बार से हम पक्का ट्राई करेंगे कि दोनों लैंग्वेज।
Thank you.
Ma'am, I want to know about the next month's workshop. If you could tell me, please.
So ma'am, date, I think अभी dates decide हो रहे हैं, it should be decided by Monday, तो हम group पे डाल देंगे।
We are keen to have a face-to-face training, ma'am, workshop. I think everybody of us.
Even that's usually how we prefer doing these workshops, but this time, I think we've all discussed the idea of doing at least one face-to-face workshop, but again, like we don't know if logistically it will be possible because of COVID now. So we'll just have to keep seeing when it's possible.
No, I'm just saying so because other trainings are going face to face. I have just attended a training face to face yesterday, the day before yesterday, in Bhopal.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
It will help us to focus on the task, and it will give us time to complete our time, because here when we are engaged in other activities, so it really becomes difficult for us to complete the task in time. So if we attend face-to-face training, we'll definitely have more chance to learn there and to focus on the task there.
Sure. So, ma'am, we can get back to you about this. I doubt for the next 2-3 workshops are due in the next couple of weeks. I doubt any of them are going to be face-to-face, but yeah, I'll give the feedback to my manager. But yeah, we'll keep you updated if anything changes.
Ma'am, because we are having exams in the next month, that's my concern. That's why I asked you.
Oh, okay. Ma'am, definitely early next week that we'll send you all the schedule for the next workshops. The dates are almost finalized.
Ma'am, it's my humble request. If you could just ask, I don't know whether I should say this or not, because I think I am the most senior one in this team. So whether I should speak or not, but with your permission, I would like to say my piece. Shall I go ahead?
Please.
हाँ, मैम मेरा ये कहना था कि क्या हो, जैसे आज मैंने दोनों वर्कशॉप अटेंड करी है 2 दिन की, तो मैंने इसके लिए छुट्टी ली है। आई हैव टेकन कैजुअल लीव फॉर इट, क्योंकि मैं बहुत इंटीरियर गांव में पोस्टेड हूँ और वहां पे नेटवर्क बिल्कुल नहीं होता मैम, तो आई हैड टू टेक लीव फॉर दैट पर्पज। अब मैं ये किससे बोलूँ मैम, ये मैं किसी से नहीं बोल सकती है, मैं किसी अधिकारी से शेयर नहीं कर सकती, तो मेरे को 2 छुट्टी मेरी चली गई। तो मतलब ये मेरा कहना है कि अगर हमको 2 दिन अगर फ्री कर दिया जाए तो हम लोग इसको कम्प्लीटली मतलब टास्क को बहुत अच्छे से करेंगे और होमवर्क असाइनमेंट्स भी कंप्लीट कर पाएंगे टाइम पे, क्योंकि इट बिकम्स वेरी एम्बैरेसिंग कि हम लोग टाइम पे नहीं दे पा रहे हैं, तो ये हमारे लिए भी, हम लोग को भी अच्छा नहीं लगता है।
Okay. ठीक है मैम, I hear you.
Well, excuse me, ma'am.
Yes sir.
I would like to add something with Rajeshri ma'am. I think ये सिर्फ राजेश्री मैम की प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. I think many of us are facing the same problem regarding the leave or on duty, concerns. तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि the authorities should make some changes in their order itself, ताकि उससे ऐसा होगा, like राजेश्री मैम is a principal herself, right? और हम लोग भी we are teachers and we have many other liabilities also as well as at the same time, and we have to perform many tasks of schools as well. तो ऐसी कंडीशन में मुझे लगता है जो ऑर्डर आप रिलीज करते हैं लाइक वर्कशॉप के लिए, तो उसमें शायद एक लास्ट में जो लाइन लिख रखी है कि सभी प्रशिक्षणार्थी सभी मतलब अटेंडीज को इस अवधि में मतलब प्रशिक्षण अवधि में मुक्त रखा जाए या फिर कोई अन्य कारण ना दिया जाए. आई थिंक उसको अगर उस सेंटेंस को थोड़ा चेंज कर दिया जाए तो इट विल बी फ्रूटफुल फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस. लाइक उसको ये कह दिया जाए कि सभी अटेंडीज को इस इन डेट्स में लाइक इन दिवस में मुक्त रखा जाए अन्य कारणों से. तो किसी को कुछ बोलने की रिक्वेस्ट लाइक फॉर राजेश्री मैम एंड मैनी ऑफ अदर्स इट इज डिफिकल्ट टू अपनी बात रखना वहां तक, और फिर विदाउट एक्सपेक्टेशन मतलब अपन सोच नहीं सकते कि सामने वाला क्या रिएक्ट करेगा एंड हाउ विल दे रिस्पॉन्ड, है ना. तो उसको अगर और फिर हर प्रिंसिपल से बात करना भी इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल, मतलब प्रैक्टिकली देखा जाए तो बेटर है कि अगर उस लाइन को सेंटेंस को ऐसे फ्रेज किया जाए कि सभी अटेंडीज को उस कार्य दिवस में मुक्त रखा जाए, तो बेटर होगा. वो अल्टीमेट इट इज द अल्टीमेट सॉल्यूशन फॉर दैट. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
No, thank you all for speaking honestly. So this is feedback we will have to take back to, I think, the SPD. I'll definitely raise it. If it's a major concern, then yes, of course, we'll try to resolve it, and we'll look at the language also of the letter that's going out to your principals or managers.
बिल्कुल. और सॉरी टू इंटरप्ट यू, क्या होता क्या है उसमें अवधि लिखा है, तो अवधि ऑफ लाइक 6 hours 4 hours और 3 hours. तो आवर प्रिंसिपल वांट अस टू बी देयर. ओके. तो जबकि अभी हम कुछ लास्ट कुछ सम वीक्स से फ्यू वीक्स से अपन देख रहे हैं कि हमें फॉलोअप भी दिया जा रहा है. वी हैव बीन प्रोवाइड सम असाइनमेंट्स आल्सो. तो वो चीज करना बाय लेट नाइट एनी हाउ वी आर सबमिटिंग इट. तो वी हैव आल्सो सम कमिटमेंट्स रिगार्डिंग आवर पर्सनल लाइफ आल्सो. तो वो कहीं ना कहीं इट इज गेटिंग डिस्टर्ब्ड, so it is just a humble request on my behalf. Yes,
right.
I would
continue
also
Garima,
like to add that explaining every time the reason, it seems as if we are doing our own work. So getting relaxation from our periods is also kind of we don't feel like good. So if a whole day if we get off from our classes, and also we would be able to focus more on the assignments which are given to us.
Okay.
So I agree fully with Rashmi ma'am, Amit sir and Mukesh sir.
Okay. No, thank you for sharing. Definitely, I will pass on this feedback. It sounds like there's a lot of time constraint. Anyone else? And don't worry, like we won't take names or anything, but we'll just pass on the feedback anonymously, or like as a group we'll pass on the feedback. So that should not be a concern.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, please don't mention our names.
Of course not. Okay, so then if there's nothing else, then can you all give me a time by when you all can submit the feedback forms and the post test? I think it should take 20 minutes, no more than that.
Ma'am, 3 o'clock, ma'am. 3.
Okay, let's say 5 o'clock today then. Does that work for everyone?
Yes, ma'am, perfectly.
Ma'am, please make it 8 today.
8 p.m. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thank you all so much. 8 o'clock तक please submit कर देना, and your feedback will definitely be shared. और उस feedback form में भी there is one part where we've asked you all to share about the workshops, and if you all have any critical comments on it, Again, like, please feel free to be honest. Like, we also want to improve. ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है कि we will get offended or anything. It's nothing like that. Please, wherever you're sharing feedback, be as critical and as honest as possible. No one's feelings will be hurt. So feedback form baby, please be like, yeah, as honest as you're being right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, then we can close. Thank you all so much. Have a good remaining weekend.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Same to you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.